I'm doing this video today because I just started doing jujitsu. I used to do jujitsu many years ago, actually, before I started Final Expense. And I ended up quitting. At the time, I was a blue belt. And if you've ever done jujitsu or if you've ever done any kind of martial arts, I kind of give you the jujitsu perspective. Once you reach blue belt, it becomes and can become very frustrating. You felt like you're progressing at a certain rate. You could measurably see yourself improving, but then things tend to change. It seems like when you get the blue belt, and I felt at the time that I quit that I wasn't getting anywhere. I was dealing with a lot of, I was seeing my peers do better than me, and eventually I got frustrated. Part of it was my fault. I wasn't giving it the time necessary to follow through. And but now 7 years later, I'm wiser and more experienced. And one thing I discovered is that final expense selling is very much like jujitsu in the sense that you have to commit through a process of learning. Even though, in spite of frustrations, you got to figure out and continue on with the process because you have to trust the process to provide the results eventually, and not necessarily measure yourself from session to session if you're doing jujitsu or from appointment to appointment. So the title of this video is Final Expense Selling Theory versus Application. And I'll kind of relate jujitsu to some extent versus how final expenses kind of show the similarities because both are performance art. And I said art, not science. You adapt to the environment that you're in. And that's what makes the difference between the theory of what we teach of how supposedly final expense is supposed to be sold versus the actual application of getting out there. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Of course, if a guy comes along with me, does a ride along with me, sees how I do it, I can relay this because I've had agents who do this brand new, want to learn from me, and then I can remember being new to this business. I remember thinking, when they see me do this and sell and see me write a policy, they'll look and they'll think, well, geez, that was easy. These people were laydowns. They were easy sales. They were definitely the kind of people that were going to buy, and there was no resistance, and it was simple, and wow, this is easy. Why can't I do this? And I remember feeling the same way too when I rode along with Andrew down in Atlanta. He wrote like 2,500 in business in a day, and I watched him. I was like, this is not that big of a deal. We're doing a simple process here. You're just repeating it over and over again. And the thing, and I'm going to publish an interview next week with John Duggar, who's written 200,000 in final expense for the last year. Last 10 years, each and every year, and if not more. He doesn't like doing ride-alongs. His perspective is that if a new agent comes along and does a ride-along with you, they're not going to notice all the nuance, all the advanced top-level tier stuff that goes on in the sales process as would a new or experienced person would. So they're not necessarily going to experience the sales call the same way and may not get the kind of value that really in the thought process that goes into the salesmanship that otherwise would. And I think that's true of final expense. There is, a script that we teach, there's a process that we teach. But look, when you get out there in the real world, you don't know what you're going to run into. You're going to hear all sorts of crazy stuff. I just got done having a prospect tell me about a sex life. I didn't expect that. It's hard to stay on script when you're hearing these people who are like twice your age, laughingly, both of them there, by the way, joking about this, or I should say, lack of sex life. So it's funny. It's kind of not gross, but you get what I'm saying. So we learn a script, right? That's the theory. That's what we're taught. But in application, the reality is you're going to have to learn how to bob and weave, just like you would in a real fight scenario. You learn the process, you learn the techniques, and the real learning comes when you apply the theory to the actual action of selling final expense. When you get out there, you start to see different types of personalities, you start to see different types of people, different health conditions, different levels of resistance, different levels of excitement. And you, over time, begin to adapt to this process to where really 95+% of the time when you run into certain circumstances, it's all road. It's all, these people are starting to all become familiar. And when you go out there, especially if you bring a new person, the new person's not going to understand. You've got 3,000 or 4,000 sales calls under your belt if you've been doing this 5 to 10 years. You've seen a whole cadre of different perspectives and experiences. and you may just not pick up on that. So the thing with final expenses, to some extent, there is that level of experience that you have to learn this business. And to get to that point, this is the other relation to jujitsu, is that there is a level of frustration that you will experience. Growth is not linear; it doesn't go up in a straight line. It's like wavy, right? You know, you get better, you do well, and then you kind of go down, and you notice it, and you get frustrated. And a lot of people quit during that valley of the growth cycle. That's how final expense is. You'll go out there, you'll start getting some initial success. There's a lot of people that do great right out the gate, and then they run through a soft spot. You know, nobody wants to buy. They can't understand, what am I doing wrong? I seem to be doing everything the same way, and these people are different. They're not responding the same. And all I can say is this is the nature of a straight commission profession. People vary. You know, opinions and feelings and experiences vary with the prospects we deal with. You can do everything exactly the same, and then nothing works. And then the next week you do everything exactly the same, and everybody throws their checkbooks at you and wants you. They can drive you absolutely nuts. But what I've experienced is most agents experience this at some point in their career. It's a normal part of the process, and you have to embrace the process. Another interview I highly recommend you guys listen to, I did a while back, Nick Frumkin. He coined that term. I never really thought about it, but embrace, it's about the process, not the results. If you commit to the process of selling final expense, you commit to the system of setting appointments, seeing people, brokering with different carriers, working with somebody to help keep you mentally focused on this important process. If you stay committed to the process, the results always follow. It may come high some weeks, it may come low some weeks, it may last longer, it may not last longer in some periods of time. You will feel like frustration, but you can put faith in the system if you follow the system, if you follow the process. And just like any martial arts, you know, you're going to have those frustrations in your growth, because it may not happen as fast as you want it to. Just like in final expense, it's the same deal. You're going to experience growth. You're going to experience that you begin an understanding of who the people you see, but not without the frustration that follows. I used to be embarrassed about sharing my failure story until I realized that most successful people in life have failed a multitude of times. That it's just a normal, natural part of the process. It's not so much that you fail as much as how you deal and how you think about the failure. I had a comment on one of my YouTube videos from an agent that I worked with back in the day, and he's not in final expense. It was not for him. But he had the positive perspective of looking at this not as a failure event, but a learning event. And I think that's a constructive, positive way to look at this. He took probably some things that he learned from this and marked it up to experience and moved on. You know, in the final expense business, if you're committed to it, look, you got to look at your failures and look at them and think, well, how could I have done that better? If you don't know, ask somebody like me. I'm happy to tell you the things you can improve. And it's likely someone with more experience, with thousands of presentations under their belt, can tell you what you can do better a lot faster than you can. Sometimes we're the worst at judging ourselves as far as where our weaknesses are and where we can improve. So again, in application, final expense is frustrating. If you get through a year or two of this business and you haven't considered quitting, or you haven't considered telling these people to go pound sand, then you haven't done this in a serious effort. You've been through a real hot streak, and you haven't gone through the growth pattern that occurs through a downward cycle of you know, not getting results like you'd like to. So it's important to understand, commit to the process, commit to the long term, embrace the frustration. I promise you'll look back at it. It won't be nearly as frustrating in the future. And the likelihood is that you'll learn some pretty good lessons from those points of frustration. And really quickly, before I end, I'll give you some of my perspectives, my failures. The biggest reason I failed out in this business is because I thought I was smarter than the sales and marketing system. I had developed my own lead piece at a time when I couldn't afford financially to follow through with it. I had proven to myself, and I knew I was good at this business, but financially I wasn't on firm footing to experiment with something untested and untried. And my arrogance got in the way of the fact that the system that I used worked just fine. I just had to also embrace the fact that with this system of using direct mail pieces, you're going to deal with 75% of these people who are going to be rude, non-buyers, liars, or just never answer the phone. But that's okay, because it's 25% that I should be concerned with. I lost sight of that. I thought, well, I don't want to talk to any of those 75% because it hurt my feelings that they didn't buy, or they frustrated me, bothered me like that. And so by ignoring the truth of this business, the normal aspect of the 75-25 rule, I guess you could call it, or even the Pareto principle, the final expense, I totally lost my shirt. I had to get a job for a year, get back on my feet financially till I could jettison the job and get back to final expense, thankfully. Of course, I'm glad I went through that experience again, but at the time, of course, I hated working for somebody, and I certainly didn't like final expense when I quit. I quit final expense, but I got back into it once I realized that selling final expense is a lot better than working for the man. That's for sure. So I guess that's my moralizing stump speech to you guys. Understand that all these videos here are helpful, they're useful to you, and they will construct a process. But really, the true learning that comes from this profession is getting out there in the streets and talking to people and working with somebody who can help you identify the learning opportunities, and doing some self-thinking too as well when you run into frustrations, and learning to just stick with it, because I promise you, if you stick with it, things work out. You will have ups and downs. It's just a normal case of any kind of sales business. And if you're interested in selling final expense, of course, you can go to my website to learn more. It's feagentmentor.com. Click the contact box, and I'll be happy to speak with you more about how the mentorship program works. I work with final expense agents, other agents as well. Hey, Richard, how you doing? And would love to talk to you about how our programs work for selling final expense. We also do a little bit of Medicare sales, annuity sales too, on a cost-free system. Maybe you've seen some of those videos lately. And if you like this video, please comment below. Otherwise, subscribe. I do videos like this Monday through Friday on all sorts of topics, final expense related. Again, my name is Dave Duford, and I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time. Take care.